Exodus 16. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month after they had come out of Egypt. In the desert the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death." Then the Lord said to Moses, "I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the 6th day they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days." So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, "In the evening you will know that it was the Lord who brought you out of Egypt, and in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we that you should grumble against us?" Moses also said, "You will know that it was the Lord when he gives you meat to eat in the evening and all the bread you want in the morning, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we? You are not grumbling against us, but against the Lord." Then Moses told Aaron, "Say to the entire Israelite community, 'Come before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling.'" While Aaron was speaking to the whole Israelite community, they looked toward the desert, and there was the glory of the Lord appearing in the cloud. The Lord said to Moses, "I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them, at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God." That evening quail came and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, "It is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Everyone is to gather as much as they need. Take an omer for each person you have in your tent." The Israelites did as they were told. Some gathered much, some little. And when they measured it by the omer, the one who gathered much did not have too much, and the one who gathered little did not have too little. Everyone had gathered just as much as they needed. Then Moses said to them, "No one is to keep any of it until morning." However, some of them paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. Each morning everyone gathered as much as they needed, and when the sun grew hot, it melted away. On the 6th day they gathered twice as much, 2 omers for each person, and the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses. He said to them, "This is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is to be a day of Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake, and boil what you want to boil. Save whatever is left and keep it until morning." So they saved it until morning, as Moses commanded, and it did not stink or get maggots in it. "Eat it today," Moses said, "because today is a Sabbath to the Lord. You will not find any of it on the ground today. 6 days you are to gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will not be any." Nevertheless, some of the people went out on the 7th day to gather it, but they found none. Then the Lord said to Moses, "How long will you refuse to keep my commands and my instructions? Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. That is why on the 6th day he gives you bread for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where they are on the 7th day. No one is to go out." So the people rested on the 7th day. The people of Israel called the bread manna. It was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. Moses said, "This is what the Lord has commanded. Take an omer of manna and keep it for the generations to come, so they can see the bread I gave you to eat in the wilderness when I brought you out of Egypt." So Moses said to Aaron, "Take a jar and put an omer of manna in it. Then place it before the Lord to be kept for the generations to come." As the Lord commanded Moses, Aaron put the manna with the tablets of the covenant law, so that it might be preserved. The Israelites ate manna 40 years, until they came to a land that was settled. They ate manna until they reached the border of Canaan. An omer is 1/10 of an ephah.
What is it?
Did it have a variety of tastes?
Yeah, we'll get into the taste and stuff later, but yeah, it did have a distinctive taste to it, but it's the same stuff every morning, okay? And I think that would really make you grumble. Okay, and ephah and an omer are two units of measurement, okay? An ephah is an ancient Hebrew unit of dry measurement equal to a bushel. Do you know what a bushel would look like? A bushel, it's like a basket. It's about this big around, about that big around, and about that high. So that gives you an idea of what a bushel looks like. We don't use bushels so much anymore when we ship things. We use apple farms. Yeah, in agriculture, we still use bushels and quarts and whatnot. But for the most part, in Canada, we use liters and kilos and that kind of stuff. But an omer is 1/10 of an ephah. Okay, so it's 1/10. So it's going to be about that big around. Also refers to the sheaf of barley. A sheaf is when they take the barley stalks and they pile it up like this and tie it together. That's called a sheaf. Okay? And that was also used as part of their offerings in the temple. So you can read it there for yourself. Coriander seed. Now this we're gonna bump into this word because that's what manna tasted like. It had the taste of coriander seed. Okay, I'm hoping on the third Friday night that I'm here, we're gonna bring this together, and we're gonna have manna, and we're gonna have a bunch of other stuff. So. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're working on it. I found a recipe for manna that I'd like to try. But I'm not a cook either. I can't sing and I can't cook. Right. So the coriander fruit comes from the coriander plant, which comes from the carrot family of plants. Okay, so it's actually, you know what a carrot looks like. Well, it's from that point, and the fruit from that, they grind it up and get the seed out of it, and it's a very nice tasting seed, and actually helps with the taste. I guess God figured that manna was nasty enough that he had to put something in it to spice it up a little bit. So I think I alluded to the idea with don't confuse this word sin with the sin that we have in our lives. Sin that we have in our lives is actually a military term. It means we miss the mark. Okay? It's like an archer who can aim at a target and miss it every time. That's the metaphor that God uses in our lives. That we can try to hit His holiness, we can try to hit His character, but we're going to miss every time. Doesn't matter if you're close. It doesn't matter if you're a long way away. He is still missed. Okay. All right. So that's not to be confused with God's holiness. Let's go back to Exodus 16. And and I want to ask you some questions. Let's start with verses 2 and 3. Remembering that the children of Israel have left Egypt in a place called Ramesses. That's where they started out from, and then you can see the itinerary from there where they went. They're 30 days into this wilderness, okay? And we read about, right from the get-go, verses 2 and 3, what characterized this whole bunch of people, Israelites? Does the scripture tell us about them?
Kind of hopeless. I think they can't see what's gonna happen in the end of this trip. So they didn't know really. They knew the next day they will get a same food and then the same situation, but after that, so
Yeah. Now, up to this point, they hadn't had the manna or the quail. We don't get the manna and the quail till chapter 16,
before.
right? Yeah. That,
Oh, yes.
I think it's an assumption they were working off their supplies that they brought out of Egypt. Yeah. Remember, they brought carts and oxen and all kinds of stuff. They had animals with them. But they were soon running out of
Yeah.
supplies, okay? So, okay, in the verses here, they're characterized as a very complaining, a very grumbling people. Remember we went over those words? And you know what it's like to be around grumbly and complaining people. Have any of you worked over a suggestion box? Have you ever had a suggestion box outside of your office or at in your place of work or a school? They make me smile when I see a suggestion box because some of them are right over top of a garbage can, okay? Guy puts a suggestion and they go right in the garbage. I used to have one outside my office when I was in Tanzania. And the guys would come along and they would make suggestions. But basically it was a grumble, okay? It always seemed, they could say, why don't we do this in the shop? And it was basically a way of saying, look, I'm not happy with the way the shop is, okay? And instead of saying, I think that we should put a new drill press on the bench. Do we have the money for that? Instead of wording it that way, it always ended up, when I read it, was, oh, for crying out loud, you know we don't have the money for this, you know? And the suggestion box became a way of grumbling. Well, Moses' suggestion box was jammed full of bad suggestions at this point, okay? And so his suggestion box was pretty darn full. All right, but what was their complaint? What were they actually complaining about, and was it a legitimate? Was the complaint that they have, was it reasonable to complain about it?
Maybe,
What was their complaint?
maybe because you said that the sin is thorn, like, they would walking on these thorns. So maybe that's the other reason.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
why they're complaining.
So it's not just one thing. Maybe there's other things. Yeah, that's a good point. The thorns would be, okay. Anybody else want to?
No food.
No food.
No good food.
No variety.
It's not no food, it's no good food.
No
No choice.
Do you think if you came to a meeting and you weren't fed, would you complain? Would you grumble? No, you wouldn't. Good, that's great. I love your attitude. All right. Anything broke down in the people's lives? I mean, to cause them to get to this point.
They trust in God.
They're trusting God. Okay.
Confidence in Moses and their patience.
Yeah. Confidence in Moses.
You know where you're going? Are we there yet?
Yeah.
Are we lost?
Some of these grumblings that I've mentioned, they identify some of the breakdown. Okay. You think about it, and you think about some of the things that we do in our lives that causes a breakdown in our relationship with God. Just don't think that these guys, because they lived 4,000 years ago, anything's changed much in human nature. Okay, that's my point.